Good evening, friends, and welcome to this edition of the Thursday Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. I am delighted to be with you, and a fairly signature nosed wine. This one has a particular profile on the nose that I'm trying to place. A profile that just jumped right out as I just poured the wine 1 minute ago before I clicked go live. So we will work on this together and try to figure out what it is that we have here as we first determine who we have here. And Candy and Kathy and Kevin are joining us this evening as they do each week. Thank you so much. Great to see you guys. Cheers. I know Jan and her daughter and friend are downstairs. I don't know if they're joining us actually, but they have the wine in front of them and are sipping on that, so I know we have a few others at least. And I met with a couple folks today who might be joining in as well. But if you're here, chime in and let us know. Johnny, hey guys, the Sanders are here. It's awesome. You guys were in earlier this week I don't even know, last week to have dinner, which was wonderful seeing you guys. Drink some good wines. And now we get to do it again this evening. So for those of you that are watching, what do you see? What kind of wine do we have here? It's a red, of course. What kind of color are you seeing? And who wants to take a stab at the profile of this particular wine? Again, the profile we determine a little bit from how it appears in the glass, both the color, whether or not you can see through it, what it does when you swirl it in the glass, and then the formation of sort of the tears that run and the legs that stay. We've got Jason and Julie here, Trish, Andy, and Kathy with Rob and Kathy. You guys are all coming back this evening, and thank you for that. So what do you think of this red number? There's a profile about this. I just got to get back to that. Legs are super, super slow, Johnny's noting. And that's true. So it is forming. It takes a minute, and then they go, but they don't race down. They do kind of just ease on down, which might be an indication of residual sugar, higher alcohol, concentration. The color isn't very intense, is it? It has sort of a deeper core, but it's not inky black by any means. It has a profile that's a little bit on the lighter side of things. You're picking up a little tawny color there, Robert? A little watery rim for sure. There's a tiny variation between the rim and then the core. It's more ruby in color. But there is a little bit of, I don't know, I'm not picking up as much the tawny. There's that watery rim kind of lightens out that ruby, which makes it almost feel like, yeah, it could be a little tawnied. Good evening to you. The Kestenbaums are here tonight. Thank you guys for joining us. It's exciting to see you. I think I got a little fly in my wine that just jumped in. That's a particular smell I'm trying to still work on. So yes, we got that ruby kind of color, a little bit of watery rim, which again goes back to potentially higher alcohol. That higher alcohol matches a little bit with the legs and the tears that go slow, and the legs that also stay kind of established even as you swirl it and let it sit for a bit. They're still there. So we might be looking at a medium plus to maybe more robust bodied wine, but it's not a light wine based on that. Shirley family, hello guys, welcome. Cast of regulars joining us this evening. Cool. All right, what do you smell? What's on the nose? A few things: fruit, earth, and wood. On the fruit side, what are we picking up? On the earthen side, what are we picking up? And I think that's what I'm getting to. There's a wood note on this wine. There's that sort of very nice French oak. It smells like nice French oak that you often pick up on a youthful wine that's seen some lovely oak. And that's trying to pinpoint the exact smell, but it's like the smell is an amalgam of different smells that are all together. Chris, you're picking up some raspberry. Julie's picking up some smoke. A tiny bit of menthol in the nose, Candy. Cool. Yep, Jan, Leslie, and Lauren, as I was noting, are in the restaurant eating and joining in. That's wonderful, guys. You are just below me as I'm doing this, and you're down there. Robert picking up the fresh cherry, a little bit of vanillin element. It's not as like overt on the vanilla side as you might get from sort of American oak or a robust wine that has that profile, but there is an element there. Allison and David, thank you guys for at least road tripping with us. That's awesome. I'm glad you don't have the wine if you're in the car. That's potentially problematic, but I'm delighted that you're nevertheless listening and chiming in. Play along anyway. Use what we're talking about to see if you can offer any insight. Sometimes that's the best way. You don't have the bias of what actually is tasted. You can more objectively look at what's noted and then offer something. Jan, you like the vanilla idea? Cool. All right, so that vanillin element is an indication of oak. So we're not necessarily getting any real help with the varietal per se, but when you think, gosh, there's a fair amount of oak, a pronounced oak signature, certain varietals wouldn't necessarily get that oak signature as prominently, right? So think of something like Gamay, right? It is certainly made in oak, but it isn't one that often sees such a riding quality of oak. A couple of you are noting some eucalyptus, huh? And so eucalyptus would be something that you see, definitely something you need to consider from a place perspective. Australia gets eucalyptus. There's eucalyptus there, and vineyards often present eucalyptus. And so there's an opportunity for this to be a wine that has a little bit of eucalyptus, and therefore you should consider Australia. Certainly some oak used there too. That's pretty cool. A menthol, eucalyptus, a zingy minty element that's here. It's coming out more and more. John McPherson, this is fantastic. John, in his retirement from hospitality, now getting a chance to watch us do our game, never having the opportunity before, as he used to be heading up the operations at Three Blacksmiths. I hope you're enjoying yourself, John, and enjoying that glass of wine. Hopefully it's this wine, but if it's not, another one certainly will do, and you're welcome to play along. But cheers to you, sir, and thank you for joining us. So, all right, some ruby character in the color, a little bit of viscosity, a little bit of potential alcohol by the watery rim and the lag tear formation. The cherry has a fresh cherry quality, a little bit of cherry cough drop, so a medicinal cherry element. That medicinal also picking up on sort of that camphor, menthol, eucalyptus element that's in this wine. There's a vanillin quality. Well, I mean, we're doing a good job of describing. Add in that smokiness that was also put there. We should be considering, if we're at least thinking about Australia, so Shiraz. We should be talking about a potential here of some Shiraz. Shiraz giving you a little bit of that smokiness, a little bit of that vanillin character from the oak aging, and the cherry element, the minty eucalyptusy note. We could, based on all of what we just said, and without having tasted the wine, you could make a fair estimation of this wine that it would be that, and you'd get points in one of the blind tasting formats for just evaluating that way. So we're off to a great start. Jan's thinking French. We should also consider France. We could consider Syrah from France too, based on that description. But let's taste it and see where the profile is to help us rule out some other varietals and kind of zero in a touch more on what it might be. Ooh, that's tasty. That's just yummy. That cough drop element comes right through. I'm not getting as much the menthol element on the palate, the first taste. So a lot of flavors. Ooh, some of that wood lingering. This wine has a persistence, right? So the length of this wine, how long it's on your palate, how much of a persistence it has. Is it a short finish, a medium finish, a long finish? Is it within 5 seconds, sort of 5 to 20 seconds, or is it longer than 20 seconds? And this is definitely medium to maybe a longer finish. Certainly has an elegance to it for the money, a nice caliber of production here. A little hot, right? Going back to the alcohol potential, you get a little burn in the back of your throat, just a bit. It's got some weight and peppery. Another way to describe length is saying it goes on forever. That's fantastic, Robert. Thank you. It is definitely dry, but it has a fruit component, as Jan's pointing out. Definitely a lovely fruit element. It's that medicinal cherry, but it also has sort of that ripe candied cherry. So a sweet cherry to go with the medicinal cherry. A little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down kind of element that's in this wine. Johnny, you're picking up on a taste at the end too that you can't place. As you're working through this, if it pops up, share it with us. There's the tannins in this are interesting, right? So this is a dry wine, medium weight body, but with a little bit higher alcohol, right? It's not the heaviest wine. It doesn't have a super dense core of the experience of drinking. It's more in the 2% world as opposed to the whole milk world. But it has tannin that oftentimes accompanies more of the whole milk world. It's sort of in between, straddling that. So tannin's kind of medium plus. The body's sort of medium. How about the acidity? It's sort of medium too, isn't it? So we not rushed, but we definitely arrived quickly to a determination on one potential being Shiraz or Syrah. What else could this be? What else should we consider in the reddish colored character, cherry elements, some tannin, moderate acidity, oak usage? Jan mentioned France, so if you're thinking about Syrah, we should almost always kind of think about whether this might be Grenache too. Julie, thanks for Etna. So Nerello Mascalese and Nerello Cappuccio, maybe Nero d'Avola, Frappato, but some of that fantastic tannin. I was going to ask if anybody felt like this was more Italy versus France, and I'm not sure this has a super singing signature of Italy, but Etna doesn't always taste exactly like the rest of Italy. It is, for me personally, compelling like a wine from Italy, and it has a little bit higher alcohol, so being in a warmer climate, but yet can achieve freshness like something like Etna, where you have higher elevation and you have coastal influences. Starting to get some Coke flavors. Chris, yes. So that vanilla element, that kind of sweet cherry, right? Cherry cola. And that oftentimes I find in Australia. But maybe we could think about something like South Africa. We could be thinking about, is anybody thinking that there's a potential for sort of Bordeaux varietals, a little bit of Merlot, a little bit of Cabernet? A caramel touch. I think you could pick up a little caramel note for sure from the wood in here. Probably less likely from the halibut, although it has a lovely caramelized crust to that halibut dish that's running presently. And the hickory element that's on there. Yeah. Chris, you think it's New World? I'm going back and forth on New World versus Old World. The initial impression was definitely New World, but the oak seemed a little bit more Old World in its orientation. So less about American oak, more about French oak. But the fruit expression is a little bit more New World, and I'm trying to ponder where we would find this if we were finding this in the Old World. And Italy and Etna has an argument, but I don't know that the fruit would be the same. Spain, it doesn't seem like this might be that. There'd be like a little more drying characteristic perhaps to the fruit. The tannins are soft and fine, so they can be soft and kind of lunky, right? A little bit more voluminous. These are like thin tannins that are a little bit finer and yet they lay soft. Gosh. What about something like, no, I'm talking myself out of it. I'm trying to work my way, would this be something Merlot oriented, like that soft tannin element coming from somewhere like Chile? And I don't know about that cherry element being the more signature character to this. I kind of like the Syrah element more. Oh, it's changing though. Could we be drinking Pinot Noir? I don't think so. Bottle shape. The wine has a little bit more robustness to it, a little higher alcohol, but what else are you guys thinking? What other varietals should we consider? Etna, Syrah Shiraz. What else? Yeah, playing the game at 25, Pinot Noir, probably not in the bottle shape. It's not going to give us, maybe. We're not playing the wine here, we're playing the bottle and the game. So what's the wine telling us? I'm trying to get myself out of the rut I established right off the bat, which isn't to say that I won't come back to it, but I don't want to just fall into that rut and say, I think this is Australian Shiraz, which I could be very wrong about. Cab Franc. Okay. The Cab Franc with the menthol eucalyptus element. Not so much going to pick that up in Virginia, for example. I think we're going to get a little bit more rustic quality than what we're seeing right here from a Loire Valley version. We've had some interesting Cabernet Franc in the past from say Argentina, and that was neat. Yeah, lots of caramel. It's definitely showing a little bit more of that wood profile. Julie, you're noting the Syrah tannins, huh? Yeah, it's just I'm having a hard time moving past Syrah. I mean, it could be coming from Chile. It could be coming from California. Less, I think so. Less Washington. I'm not sure that we're drinking. But even as I'm saying that, then it's like, well, I'm saying that because I don't know that this is round enough, kind of raisiny enough, rich enough on the Syrah side, and yet I'm angling for Australia, so it'd be kind of a cooler presentation of Shiraz. A Syrah Merlot blend. Now that's that's interesting. Could we be doing that from like the Swartland from South Africa? A lot of really cool Syrah produced. A blend with Merlot. Ripe profile, but not like super ripe, not super jammy ripe, but the alcohol's there. Tannins are present, but they're not massive. That's kind of neat. I like that idea. It is changing the nose. It's building a little bit for me as this sits open, a bit more structured. Some of that fruit is still there, but it's being met by a bit more tannin, the acid elements there, without it being overpowering. But it's becoming more of a structured wine rather than just sort of the overt fruit elements. Robert, you're picking up a lot of Australia notes, huh? But so a Bordeaux blend in Australia for sure, right? So we could be drinking a Merlot blend or maybe a Syrah Merlot blend from Australia. I mean, that's certainly an option. Both South Africa and Australia would put us in the New World. Old World varietals. There isn't a real strong signature kind of that plum element, but there is an element of sort of Merlot tannin and Syrah tannin, or Shiraz tannin. So, is it anything from Northern Italy? Is it anything from Austria? Is it anything from? Could we be drinking Zinfandel? Could we be anything else you think we should consider? Yeah, that caramel's really popping out now. All right, recapping. Ruby character in color, a little bit slightly tawny, but sort of the watery rim meniscus presents something that might be perceived a little bit tawny, but it's mostly ruby. Kind of medium intensity, medium weight, higher viscosity in the wine in the formation of legs and tears, so a little higher alcohol. A little bit of burn in the back of the palate as you taste it, so that references higher alcohol, a warmer climate, but there's a cooling element to it as the fruit is sweet and sweetened in profile, candied, and yet also medicinal. And so the site has maybe a little bit of a eucalyptus tree, something that has a mintiness to it. Medium tannins that are fine, medium acid. Chile and Australia, yeah, Chris, I think Australia would be too easy. It would be, and so I appreciate your comment about Tony having a twist on that. A Northern Italian red, Friulian red, and that's where Merlot certainly would be something we could talk about here. But I'm wanting to evaluate it in that context, and I'm venturing back to where the Sanders are, which is I don't think this is Italian, but there's elements here that you can make the case convincingly that it would be from there. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Candy, and Kathy and Kevin. Like, this is exactly where I find myself. Okay, so Kathy's like, what do you do with the oak? The oak's French. Kevin's been in Australia since minute 5. I've been there since like sniff 2. And Candy can be in Europe. So the most complete answer would be sort of like an answer that would completely cover what we've talked about would be sort of a Syrah Cabernet Merlot type blend from sort of Australia or South Africa, where you'd get a little bit of that eucalyptus element, a cooling influence from sort of a sea or a high elevation, but generally speaking, more of a warm place overall. It could be, maybe we're talking about Friulian red with Merlot and some Cabernet in it. Maybe we're talking about, I don't know. It's that candied fruit eucalyptus element that's still bringing me back to Australia. Hmm. It changed a little bit, right, as you were noting, guys. That caramel element. It's very fresh. It's youthful. I don't think this is terribly aged. I mean, I think it's got 3 years of age on it, maybe. It's more on the youthful side of things. 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4. So I would probably guess 2018, 2019. So kind of a cooler climate Australian Syrah Shiraz blend. That I think is where I would go. We had just had this event for our membership guild, the Hestia Guild, and we poured a wine from Australia that had Cabernet and Shiraz in it, or Syrah. It's kind of reminding me of that. That one was a little bit easier than this. It didn't have as much tannin, but it reminds me of that. It's called the Great Cabsby. A fun wine that comes from Roby, which is part of South. It's a smaller appellation in South Australia. Excuse me. I wouldn't feel bad though if I made a guess for kind of South Africa too, and I think you could still make a case for some parts of Italy. I'm less in France, although I like the oak element there too. So if I'm gonna have to put a pin in it, and I do, I'm gonna go. Mainly because of that eucalyptus element and the smoke we picked up and that cherry quality and that cola element, vanilla. I'm going to Australia. I'm going to do kind of a cooler element. I don't think this is like dead set center Barossa Valley, but it has a cooling element to it without it being austere by any means. So Australia, cooler climate, something like something with a coastal influence or a high elevation kind of Eden Valley kind of element, Shiraz blend, 2019, 2018, but Where are you guys going? Chris, you're in Australia and hard to go away from it. Robert, Jan, Candy, guys, what are you thinking? Where are we going? You want to put something on the board? Sanders, where are you guys at? As you're driving, those of you driving, where from our descriptions would you put this wine? It is lovely. I agree, Jan. So 2019 Syrah Shirazi kind of blend. Johnny, you're going to go 2018 France. Robert, you're an Aussie. GSM. GSM is a good call too, like a GSM blend or Bordeaux blend. The blend is nice. Cab Franc from South America. Julie, cool. I think there's room for that too. The only issue is the menthol element, but that could be that one vineyard there has some. So I think what we're describing is New World Syrah that has a little bit of oak element and maybe a blend there. So Australia and France. So it's got a sloped bottle that suggests potential for Syrah, right? Or a GSM blend. Oh, interesting. Very cool. All right, well, we're on the right train in terms of Syrah, but we talked about, or at least I mentioned, and then we walked right away from Washington State. This is Yakima Valley, right in the center of Washington, from the Copeland Vineyard. This is the Two Mountain Syrah. Very cool. That's a neat wine. I'm drinking bottle 4,314. I imagine you guys are drinking a hand label too. This is a nice wine for the price for sure. We got Syrah right, and there's a 2% addition of Petite Syrah. I mean, the freshness here is really cool, and the eucalyptus element is something to consider. I don't place it oftentimes in Washington. That's pretty cool. Great pick. So that's how Tony does an Australia adjacent Shiraz. He gives it to us from Washington. It's a very nice Washington wine. It's a really good one. You have 4310. What else do you guys have? So we got 4314. So we must have been kind of in the 43 to 10 to sort of 22 range maybe for the 12 to 24 bottles that we have. We're all in the 4300s. It's just a nice wine. It's getting it's got a little tea note to it now, and the wood is there. They use some nice wood on this wine. The label's lovely. I mean, it's got that fantastic texture, and to Mountain Winery from the Copeland Vineyard. So from a single vineyard. Great. 4310. That's pretty cool. My pleasure, Candy. Happy always to navigate, even if I take you to the wrong continent. And as part of the tour, take you right by where we're supposed to be and then keep on cruising. Nevertheless, it's fun. So 4320, 4343, 4339. We've got kind of that little 20 bottle. We usually get 24 to 36 bottles of something. This is neat. I would be happy to have this. I meant to look at the alcohol and haven't caught that yet. I was curious because it drank a little hot to start with. 14%. So it's a robust wine. It's got a robust alcoholic profile. Yeah, this is a good price. Meaty. The meatiness is coming out for me now, Julie. Like, it wasn't something I think I didn't certainly miss it. I don't think it wasn't as prominent and present. It's now changing a touch. That fruit is making a transition to not be the thing that's driving the bus, or at least being the only thing that's showcasing itself. There's more elements now coming around. This is a good wine. I'd like to keep this for a little bit and see where it goes. I don't think it would age tremendously well past, say, 5 or so, 10 years, but it would be fun to see as some of those earthy notes and that smoky note kind of come around. It would be fun. It's a really nice wine for the price. Yeah, that's fun. We're tasting today and talking with one of our distributors about some wines that you think about, you enjoy, contemplate, you find compelling notes to them, you work them out. It's a thought process. And there are other wines that you open and you taste and you go, oh, that's interesting. And you look back in a few moments and you realize an hour has passed and most of the wine's gone. This is kind of in that camp where, yeah, you just keep sipping on it, drinking it. It'll go with a lot of things. It has a really nice compelling character on its own, but it would be a wine that would do well with a whole series of different things that you might be eating right now as the temperatures begin to slightly cool. Slightly, I say, because it's still beautifully warm during the day here. But a fun wine, all nevertheless. So Two Mountain, something to look out for. Copeland Vineyard, and Syrah. Cheers, everybody. I'm going to have a little more of that as I sign off, and we'll meet you up here again next Thursday. And then we'll take a week break for Thanksgiving. We'll come back and do a couple more, and I think we'll end for this year on the 16th as we break then for the holiday, and we retool for the coming year as we look to add a few things together, a few things in this program, kind of welcome your ideas and thoughts on how we might add to this going forward and what might make it more compelling and interesting. There's a couple of ideas that are floating around, and we'll take the break to kind of think about those and see what we can do to make this, if we continue to do this in a way that's meaningful for everyone and an evolution of it. So love to hear your thoughts. You can email me with them at any point. My name's Neal, Neal, and it's at fieldandmainrestaurant.com. So if you have thoughts about what would make this fun and interesting as we continue forward with it, I would love to hear them. Until then, until next week, cheers, everybody. Have a great week.